Hello and welcome to the Field of Streams podcast for Friday, August 5th. I'm your host, Dylan Higgins, joined by my co-host, Brad Johnson. Brad, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. We are here for another Friday morning live broadcast, live here on Rotographs, doing this show, with our webcam setup, our video, and our live chat. So if you're following along, make sure to chat with us. And then we're going to look at these millions of options here on another big full Friday slate. Brad, did you have any immediate takeaways from how this Friday looks?
On the pitching side, it's usually where I start just because want to get a sense of who I think could have a big outing and then who looks most exploitable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a weird group. The aces have their warts, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's your usual group of just complete trash pitchers. And there's a lot of mid-tier guys who all have the potential to be the top pitcher of the day. That's always a little confusing when you got a 15 game slate and
Mm-hmm.
all these guys who might be good, might be bad. It's just they have a wide range of outcomes. I feel like in these types of days, your winning lineup's going to end up being like just someone who stacks against Scott Kazmir and gets lucky. And
Yeah.
so it's like I said, it's a little bit confusing knowing what to do with it. Do you go with the percentage plays like going against Tim Lincecum, or do you try to get cute with it and go after someone like a DeSclafani or a Stephen Wright even is another guy
Mm-hmm.
who's available and can sometimes have a bad
It's
outing.
it's hard to guess. There's a lot of places to go, but we will definitely get into them. We're also running. You are running another Daily Grind Invitational contest.
That's right.
That is, on Twitter. You can follow Brad at Baseball A Team, and it's also here on the post at Rotographs. There's a link there. Brad, how have those been going?
Pretty good. I've personally had a good day the other day, and I always like to get a win and be able to put my own name up top of the
Sure,
leaderboard.
sure.
But yeah, my users, the core group, they've been beating me by a small amount for the most part. There's like probably about 10 to 12 people who get into just about every one of the invitationals, and then the remaining 8 slots are usually filled out with others.
That's
And
great.
yeah, we welcome everyone. It's a fun time. We have some nice conversations on Twitter and in the comments too
Yeah.
about what's been done.
For Friday, for today, that's on FanDuel. So if you want to play with Brad and other Rotographs regulars, and actually, what I like about it is you get back the community part of fantasy
Yeah.
baseball, which is one of the only things that I feel is missing from DFS. And get to play with regulars again. You can join up there. And the other fun part is you get to use Brad's own advice against him after the show. So
Yeah,
I,
that part's challenging. I
yeah.
find that my advice, like obviously people who join the invitational also read my column usually, and I
Mhm.
find that they have implemented my advice, so I have to
Yeah.
like go against my instincts a lot
Yeah.
with lineups that aren't really something I would do in a like the FanDuel Squeeze, for example.
Yeah. So check out the Daily Grind Invitational. There's a link there on Twitter and in the post. And then Brad, this week was trade deadline. Did that hit you at all in weird ways? Does it
Oh
mess with your
yeah,
DFS
on some
game
weird
or?
ways.
Yeah.
It wasn't such a big deal for DFS. There's like I feel like it was like a 9 game slate that day,
Mm-hmm.
and the big takeaway is I had Brandon Geyer and Steve Pierce stolen from my lineups,
Yeah.
which I mean I had time to adjust for it. I knew it was going to happen, but it's still sad. They had a nice lefty matchup that day. I forget who it was, but it was someone you could exploit.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into this big,
Sure.
big, fat Friday slate. There's plenty going on. It's a full 15 games. They're all evening games. It's about the biggest DFS group you can get. Brad, we start at catcher. Where do you think you want to go at catcher for Friday?
Yeah, so two names kind of jump off the page to me, and they're not really the biggest names at the position. Evan Gaddis is one of them. He's,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess a lot of people look at him as a big name for a catcher. Obviously, you're looking for home runs or bust basically out of him. He's up against Martin Perez, who, not a very good lefty.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes gets through his outings, sometimes a little bumpy. Tends to allow home run per start in general. So maybe Gaddis is the guy who sends it deep. Maybe he can be involved in run production another way. In any case, he's looking at one of the better plays, and he's cheap on FanDuel, not so much on DraftKings. He's 4,500 on DraftKings, and let me find him on FanDuel, 3,000 there.
Yeah, no, I had him written down as well. I like that, especially getting a lefty. Is a good situation for him. And if you're talking about him allowing homers, I think that's a good situation for him to be into. Because certainly it's the power to run into one.
The other guy I really like a lot tonight, and the sites are in on it. It's a Coors game. JT Realmuto up against Jorge De La Rosa. A very different play than Gaddis. Not really a power threat, but can string together multiple hits in a game. Sometimes bats up in the lineup. Does have power. It's not like it doesn't exist. It's just not as much as Gaddis. And then will steal bases too. So there's a lot of ways for him to provide value. Unfortunately, he's expensive on both sites. As I mentioned, they're wise to going after players in Colorado. Still, if you have the money for it, if you're using a cheaper pitcher today, I'd look to Realmuto if I can.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and then if you need someone really cheap, FanDuel, $2,000, you can get Gary Sanchez. And he's not the best catcher out there. He projects to be like a 90 WRC plus hitter right now. Probably grow into more, but that's where he is at this stage of his career. And games in New York, a good place for power in general. Josh Tomlin's homer prone, and Sanchez does have homer power, so you could get a cheap home run out of him. And again, that's 2,000 on FanDuel.
Especially in Yankee Stadium.
On DraftKings.
Yeah.
But he's also very cheap on DraftKings, 2,400 there.
Yeah.
So either site, go ahead and use them.
Yeah, I like that. I wrote down Josh Tomlin later. We'll talk about it when we get to pitchers. He's allowed home runs in 9 straight games. He's allowed 25 on the year in 19 starts. Like we keep saying, he's homer prone. I went to go check if that was still true. Yeah, that's still true. Yeah, that's still his thing. He's also still good though. So he still has a 3.43 ERA. Doesn't walk anybody. So
he doesn't allow base runners. It's a lot of fly balls, and sometimes they leave the park.
Yeah, basically, usually at least once a game. So it could be Sanchez. I think if you're going for a cheap punt there's no reason not to take a guy that might be the one that puts it over the fence. So yeah, I'm into that. I like Gary Sanchez. I wrote down also Cameron Rupp gets Christian Friedrich. I like Cameron Rupp getting lefties. It's in San Diego, so I'm not pumped about it. I wish it were in Philly, but him getting a lefty, and I don't think Christian Friedrich's that good. I think that's totally fine for Cameron Rupp. There are a couple of Phillies I like against lefties, but he's becoming a totally fine option there. I also wrote down, Buster Posey gets Gio Gonzalez. If you want to pay for it, you can. I'm not thrilled about it, but him getting a lefty is always interesting. Him most days is interesting. There's not really a lot to go on there. I'm not usually one to spend a lot of catcher. It's such a tough position, but I don't think you'd be nuts if you wanted to do that. My last one is Matt Wieters is going to the cell and getting Miguel Gonzalez. Are you interested in that at all when he gets a righty? Miguel Gonzalez has not been as bad as you would think, but him and the White Sox bullpen are still one to pick against, right?
Yeah, I have no qualms against that. It's definitely one that has solid potential and shouldn't be terribly popular. And it's a great hitter's park, so you could see one fly out from Wieters.
Yeah, Miguel Gonzalez has a 4.06 ERA. I think if you told White Sox fans that he's made 16 starts for him so far, and his ERA is right around 4, okay, that could be worse, or what we figured to be a 5th starter. But I think Wieters is fine in that matchup. Okay, on to first base. As usual, plenty of options, but who are your favorites at first base?
Yeah, so favorites. I wasn't too thrilled with the big names today. Will Myers stood out as someone I like up against Jeremy Hellickson. There's just several ways he can provide value. You can send one deep, multiple hits, steal bases. I think a stack against the Phillies in general makes some sense. The Padres do have more weapons against righties these days. And Myers prefers lefties, I believe, but I don't think the split's very big. Again, a guy you can use, especially if you're thinking about going with guys like Ryan Schimpf and Alex Dickerson. Other first basemen that I like, Um, there's always some of the top options. Edwin Encarnacion, great run production guy, good power up against Dylan G.
He just reached like 30 homers for the 5th year in a row or something. Some headline I saw. Yeah, he's doing just fine. He gets Dylan G. It's in Kansas City. It's a Kansas City bullpen, but I still like that, at least that starter matchup for him.
Right, and they're one Wade Davis shy of their previous arrangement. Yeah. So they're a little less intimidating. You got Kelvin Herrera in the 9th inning, and then before that, it was never terribly scary. It's just you had good, not great pitchers to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still the case. Some other options can try Anthony Rizzo up against Dylan Overton, lefty on lefty. One of those days when people walk away from Rizzo and maybe they shouldn't. So give him a look. And then, I like Tommy Joseph up against lefties. And you mentioned there's a few in that Phillies lineup. Joseph's one of them. He has platoon splits. They're mostly kind of noise, I'll say. A lot of BABIP-related split there. If you look at the plate discipline, he does strike out less against lefties, and that's really the only difference between his lefty and righty numbers.
You trust him against righties, though?
Yeah, I trust him enough. And you got a lefty on the bump today. The only downside, again, is Petco Park, tough on right-handed power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you like, how about Chris Carter getting Braden Shipley? Are you in on Braden Shipley? Are you ready to pick on him? What are you taking away from that?
Yeah, I'd go after a Milwaukee stack today. It's one that has as much potential as a lot of these other scrubby type pitchers, and I feel like it'll probably be overlooked quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. The only other, I had a few other names. Hanley Ramirez gets Scott Kazmir. I got to make sure he's healthy and in the game, especially in El Park. But if Hanley Ramirez gets the lefty and Kazmir, I think that's totally fine. Carlos Santana gets Michael Pineda. Are you ready to, do some Indians at Yankee Stadium?
Yeah, go ahead and do Indians. Pineda's always a challenging guy to think about using or targeting, just because he's got the strikeouts, he's got the stuff to have great outings, and tends to just flop at some point every time out. So
yeah. His ERA is over 5 on the year,
Yeah, you can get a wide range of possible outcomes out of that Indians game there.
Pineda has 143 strikeouts in 119 innings. Like, that's awesome. But here's his earned runs allowed in his last starts: 5-1-0, 5-5-1-1. You're just like, all right, it's either going to be awesome or pretty rough. The control numbers look great. 20 homers allowed and 21 starts, though. Yeah, Pineda's a frustrating guy. So I think Santana could run into one there. The last first baseman I wrote down, he's been playing the outfield more, but would you think about Brandon Moss, who just came back? And he's at home against Joel De La Cruz of the Braves and the Braves bullpen. Do you like Brandon Moss at all?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely like a Cardinal stack today. You're getting Matt Carpenter back too. Should be exciting times for them to have some of their guys healthy finally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's a guy to pick on.
I believe in Brandon Moss. I believe in him more than Matt Adams right now. It might be in the outfield, but I think that's totally fine. Especially against Joel De La Cruz, which I imagine you don't have much faith in.
No, I don't have too much of a read on him. The numbers don't look very impressive, and that's about all I know about him.
Yeah. Okay. Were there any other first baseman for you?
Could consider giving Pedro Alvarez a shot at U.S. Cellular Field. That's Miguel Gonzalez again. And Alvarez has been hitting fine since about the middle of the year, showing power. As a 1B on DraftKings. I think FanDuel might have him as third baseman. Let me check.
Yeah, but doing his thing, striking out a lot, not a high average, but has the power, especially at the price to run into him. And yeah, I can't believe how bad that White Sox bullpen has been. I guess I can believe
it. They've struggled quite a bit.
Yeah.
And other guy you could try to think of as a punt, Adam Lind. I'd use him only as a Mariner stack.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are pulling together several Mariners up against Tim Lincecum, go for it.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that too. Okay, on to second base. Brad, who are you looking at second base?
I want to have enough money for Jose Altuve,
Yes.
and he's up against Martin Perez, and again, that's just a situation that doesn't get too much better than that. He's quite expensive, but not completely out of control. 5,100 on DraftKings, and then 4,200 on FanDuel. So
Yeah.
I think either site you can squeeze him in if you're using the right guys. Like if you're using Gary Sanchez as a punt catcher, then you'll have room. Robbie Cano, also very expensive, also awesome matchup. Tim Lincecum, guy who just can't pitch to lefties. There's not too much more to say about that. It's a prime situation.
Yeah.
Also like DJ LeMahieu up against David Phelps. LeMahieu's just very solid, a different player than Altuve and Cano in terms of DFS production. You're hoping for those multiple hits, maybe a stolen base. If he hits a home run, it's kind of a fluke, but good numbers and a lot cheaper on FanDuel than DraftKings, so better play on FanDuel.
Yeah, LeMahieu's kind of surprised people by turning into a pretty consistent producer, and not a stud, not amazing, but every year, like, the batting average is there, the points are there, and you're kind of like, all right, yeah, didn't realize that LeMahieu was that legit. So not a flashy player, but especially in Coors, I think that's totally an option.
Yep, and then there's still a lot of options at second base beyond that even. Those are mostly the expensive guys. You got Matt Carpenter coming back at a reasonable price. Javi Baez is up against Dylan Overton, so the platoon advantage.
Yeah, him getting a lefty is a big deal. I like that.
Brian Dozier has a lefty. Blake Snell, who I like Snell a lot, but I think certain Twins will probably get to him at some point. Don't know they'll be Dozier himself, but somebody will do it, I think.
Yeah, I think the Twins have enough right-handed guys to make that a little bit worrisome. So yeah.
And then Jason Kipnis is batting really well. He's at Yankee Stadium. Excellent place for lefty power. I mentioned Pineda's kind of all over the place in terms of expected results. So he's a good play too.
You mentioned Ryan Schimpf. Are you in on Ryan Schimpf, both on Friday and in general?
So I've been looking into him more, and what I've kind of come away with is this is going to sound funny. He's sort of like a left-handed Jose Bautista, but he's 5'9", so he's like a really small left-handed Jose Bautista.
Sure.
His hitting profile skews the fly balls like crazy, and that allows his power to really play up. The result also is a very low BABIP and a low average in turn. So you're gonna have to deal with that. He's pretty patient, just like Bautista. Not quite that same plate discipline, but still willing to take 10% walk rate. You're gonna get decent OBP, very low average, and a good chance for a home run. And as I mentioned, Petco Park tough on righties, not so much on lefties. They actually have a slightly above average home run rate there. And Jeremy Hellickson's a little bit homer prone too.
Yeah, I could see that.
He struggles against lefties too. That's another point.
Yeah, Schimpf had such an awesome July, and is still both, but not a big name. I mean, people are starting to pay attention, but as a Padres guy and just not so much a star, that people can definitely take advantage of it a little bit. The only name I had at second base I haven't mentioned I think is kind of interesting is Daniel Murphy gets Jeff Samardzija, and Jeff Samardzija's had such lefty-righty problems that specifically having issues with left-handed batters like Murphy, that I could see that being a pretty okay matchup for him. I mean, yeah, might have to spend on him because he's having such a crazy year, but Samardzija just can't handle lefties that well, and so there are a few of them that I like, including him. Any other second baseman for you?
No, I think I got a little too deep into it, in fact.
There's plenty. We have a comment.
So many of them.
We have a comment in the chat from our pal Yancey Eaton. Specifically, quote, Yancey from Fort Myers says, quote, "He's a really small left-handed hitting Jose Bautista is the weirdest player comp I've ever heard." So there you go. You can put that on your mantle or on your Twitter bio or something. That you're making weird player comps, and congrats to Ryan Schimpf for that, and shout out to Yancey in the chat. Again, if you're listening, we have a live chat going on Rotographs. You can be a part of the show. So feel free to get in there, ask questions, or pipe up. On to third base. Brad, who are you looking at third base for Friday?
Jake Lamb is jumping off the page for me. Cheap on both sites, and just a good matchup too. He's up against Chase Anderson, who's homer prone.
Yes.
And I misspoke a little bit. He's not cheap on DraftKings. He's 5,000 there, but he's 2,800 on FanDuel. Kind of a must play at that price. And yeah, it's just a matchup that I really like for him. I think he's a good shot for a home run. He was pretty slumpy for a while there, but he's homered in his last 2 games, so I'm not too worried about that anymore.
Yeah. Chase Anderson has not allowed a home run in his last 3 starts. Still has an ERA over 5 on the year. I'm like trying to squint and be like, Chase Anderson getting together, but it's hard to be optimistic. So, no, I like Jake Lamb a lot. It's kind of crazy that he's become such a reliable third base option most times out. So, I could see that. Who else do you like at third base?
Kyle Seager, part of this Seattle stack that I'm sure will be very popular today up against Lincecum. And Lincecum's got like an 8-something ERA, and big part of it is just lefties destroy him. And I don't see that stopping. The Mariners are a very homer-heavy lineup, and I think they'll send a couple out today. Hopefully some runners on base too.
Yeah. Do you feel like picking against Lincecum is popular just because he used to be such a big name that's so like noticeable, and now he is still a like noticeable name, but for being bad, or it's easy to be like, oh yeah, Tim Lincecum, that like I should pick against him.
I think the visibility definitely contributes. But like I expect the Mariners stack to be a lot more popular than the Brewers stack per se, even though Braden Shipley's probably roughly as bad as Tim Lincecum right now in terms of expected results. And obviously the Mariners lineup probably has more DFS octane too than the Brewers, but not that much more. Not so much that they should be 3 or 4 times more owned, and that's what I expect today.
Yeah.
So I guess do with that information as you will. The Mariners stack still probably well worth using, even if you expect it to be popular, but might not be the way to win a big GPP just because of that popularity.
Yeah. Are you all in on Chris Bryant getting Dylan Overton? Why not, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you can find the money for a Cubs stack against Overton, go ahead and do it. The only drawback is the Coliseum, and that's kind of a small drawback.
Not too worried about it, but I agree. Are you all in on Manny Machado getting Miguel Gonzalez?
Yep, I like to use Machado. I tend to try to fit him in at shortstop where he's eligible on DraftKings. FanDuel moves him around, so let me check where he is.
Yeah.
Today he is a third baseman. He's been a third baseman
how about
now.
And how about Miguel Sano getting Blake Snell?
I'm not as confident about Sano, partially because the Twins themselves are not confident in Sano. They're talking about demoting him, and I feel like those kind of things usually get into a player's head, and especially like a Latino player who's maybe not as comfortable with being in America, as comfortable with the language, and from what I've seen, he speaks through translators often, and isn't as adapted as some players. It's just there's a lot of things going on in their lives beyond baseball, and you have to keep that in mind when you start throwing threats of demotion that can really affect a player's confidence. And so it's kind of an esoteric reason to be worried about him today, but yeah, it's he doesn't stand out to me as much as some other options for that reason.
I like Sano's talent, and I like Sano against the lefty, but I agree that on a day like this on Friday, when you have so many options, that any hesitation, no matter how esoteric you think it might be, it's enough to just cross them off and go with someone else, because there are places to go, and you shouldn't have to pick people that you're not confident in. There's a lot of places, including at third base. How about Chesler Cuthbert getting Francisco Liriano? Are you in on Chesler Cuthbert at all, especially against a lefty?
Sure. I'll say sure.
Yeah. He's not an exciting name.
He's
We've crossed off Jake Lamb, Chris Bryant, Kyle Seager, Manny Machado, getting down there a little more. The cheaper guys, but not super sold on Cheslor Cuthbert.
no, and a big part of the reason is because I can reel off another 10 names that I like more than him at this point.
Mm-hmm.
There's Marwin Gonzalez up against Martin Perez. There's Michael Franco with a lefty. Danny Valencia is getting a lefty, and it's John Lester, but Danny Valencia is a beast against left-handed pitching.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
There's Yangervis Solarte against Hellickson. I like him too. There's so many guys today, and Cuthbert's kind of a
just too boring.
You're looking for production out of someone who's not really expected to provide that much. And those kind of plays are generally how you win a big tournament. You get a guy like him on a day when he hits a home run and doubles and triples and puts together something that no one else could have ever expected. My big tournament wins have all had weird plays like that. The strangest was a Brad Miller double home run game, and that was a couple of years ago. But it
happens.
Yeah, you get those days where the guy who gives you the win is someone you don't expect, and so sure, I think Cuthbert is someone you can create a narrative around that maybe he is that guy. But like I said, there's so many picks.
Mm-hmm. I agree. There's a lot. I got two more that are at least half interesting to mention for a second. Are you thinking about Adrian Beltre getting Dallas Keuchel? Beltre getting a lefty?
Yeah, I'll take a look at Beltre against a lefty. And Keuchel's been hit or miss. Yeah,
it's been better. Still not great, but better. He kind of had a good streak going on, and the last time out allowed 7 runs. But before that had done a bunch of quality starts in a row. So I'm not all in on Keuchel again, but I'm at least considering him because there were times earlier this season I was all the way out, and now I'm dipping my toe back in. That said, Beltre can handle lefty. And then my last interesting name, Martin Prado, going to Coors Field and getting a lefty. He's hit lefties well. He's hit well all year. Are you thinking about Martin Prado getting Jorge De La Rosa?
Yeah, I have no problems with going to Coors with a high average guy.
Yeah.
You tend to look for power hitters at Coors, but I like guys like Prado who are just they're gonna put their bats on everything. Everything's gonna be in play, and that field's so large. It really helps players like him. Angel Pagan is another guy I really like at Coors, who just kind of doesn't really stand out, doesn't have power, but goes 3 for 4 every time he's at Coors.
Yeah, it's not going to surprise me if Prado has a pretty good game, especially getting a lefty there. So figured a lot of options at third base, but he deserved a mention. Okay, on the shortstop, not as huge, at least for me. Were you swamped with options at shortstop?
Can't say I was.
Okay.
I like a few guys. So the one that kind of requires a little bit of explanation. We talked about Danny Valencia against John Lester. I also like Marcus Semien, and for a slightly different reason. He does have good numbers against lefties. I took a closer look at them. At this point in the season, we have enough peripherals to kind of get a sense if how much of it's luck and skill. He's a little bit better against lefties, but not as much as his surface level numbers suggest. So don't expect like a 300 average, which is I think roughly what he's doing. Expect a lower average, kind of normal power for him, and then a higher OBP than normal. The main thing I like about he's a little bit better against lefties. He has a little more power. Lester's worse against righties. Allows basically a league average batting line to righties. And then there's the stolen bases. And Semien will run if he gets on base. It's just an automatic steal. So you hope he gets some base, single, walk, whatever, and then he can take a bag. And that's the main reason I like him.
Yeah, and John Lester was all before this year allowing a million base runners, or at least base stealers specifically, excuse me. And then earlier this year was not doing that. People weren't running on him. There's theories of whether it's David Ross. He was back checking guys at first base. People weren't running. And then recently that's changed and they're running on him again. So not sure exactly what's going on, but it's clear that you can steal on him, of course. And
Yeah.
if Semion's aggressive, could see him going. So I like that. I like the base stealers against him, especially guys that can actually get on base against him, against the lefty. So I'm in there. Who else do you like at shortstop?
Going a little higher up the list, like Francisco Lindor. It's
Mm-hmm.
the Pineda matchup at Yankee Stadium. He's got enough power to take advantage of that, and he also has the high contact rates, so counteracts Pineda's strengths a little bit with the
Mm-hmm.
strikeouts. Uh, if you're thinking about Indians, I think you have to include Lindor for
Oh
that
yeah,
reason. He's just the most likely to make contact.
absolutely. How about Xander Bogaerts getting a lefty and Scott Kazmir?
Yeah, I like that one too. And the Boston stack will kind of fly under the radar a little bit today because there's so much out there. But they're
Mm-hmm.
one of the top offenses, and they got tons of really good hitters. So if you're willing to go a little cheap on the pitching, you can get a top lineup in play when it's not the most popular.
Yeah. I only had two other names at shortstop myself, and one of them I'm kind of cheating on. I wrote down Jonathan Villar, who's now playing third base, but was a shortstop through most of the year, and he gets Braden Shipley. Whether he's at third base or shortstop, you're totally fine with Villar, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. He's become a reliable guy, mostly on speed instead of power, but he's a switch hitter and he's going to be fine. Braden Shipley might have a future, but he's not great now. And he also, in the Arizona bullpen's nothing special, so I'm fine with that. My last name, Elvis Andrus, gets a lefty, and Dallas Keuchel. And Elvis Andrus is not an exciting player at all, but has been hitting lefties really well this year. But so what are you thinking here, batted ball wise, from ground ball controlled pitcher Dallas Keuchel facing ground ball speedster guy Elvis Andrus? Does that make you concerned that the contact might be just plain too weak?
Yeah, that's definitely possible. I worry about grounder on grounder guys a little less when it's a speed type play. Uh, Usually, I'm looking at those ground ball fly ball splits. It's looking for home run potential, and in this case, Andrus is just trying to find holes. So he could sneak a few through the infield, have multiple hits that way.
It is not exciting at all. It's hard. I mean, I remember when we all knew Elvis Andrus was way too high of a draft pick because people are chasing his 30 bases or whatever. But this year, he's actually doing pretty well. His OPS against lefties is 937. And yeah, that's all BABIP driven. Of course it is. 394 BABIP against lefties. I know. But it's a platoon advantage. He has looks like a career high in OPS in general. Not an exciting player, but against the lefty, I'm at least thinking about it for sure. So, but yeah, that's my shortstop. Did you have more options at shortstop than I did? Hopefully.
Yeah, there's a few more. Diddy Gregorius, Josh Tomlin matchup, home runs, lefties at Yankee Stadium. I think the narrative speaks for itself, and he's hitting for more power this year too. I think 10 home runs against right-handed pitching. So that one's a nice little cheap play, cheap on both sites. Addison Russell's a solid play against Dylan Overton. Russell has his occasional big games, tends to have lumpy performances, in my opinion. So maybe you get one of those good days from him. And then either Astros shortstop, Carlos Correa, or Alex Bregman. Bregman hasn't really done anything yet, but facing a AAA quality lefty, I think, is a good matchup to try him.
Yeah, he has like 2 hits, but I totally believe in him. He's going to be just fine. He gets Martin Perez. He has the platoon advantage. I'm still sticking with him. I mean, I think some people are ready to shy away in DFS because he hasn't done much yet. And I'm like, he's going to be fine. You want to be in on that first big day he has. You don't want to be chasing it afterwards and then trying to get him the next day. So I think Bregman's just fine. Okay, and then on to the outfield. As usual, I'm sure tons of places to go, especially in a big slate like this. But what are the highlights for you, Brad? Where do you think you're actually going to build a team in the outfield?
So you got that core stack. Either the Rockies or the Marlins both have good outfielders to pick from. David Dahl's remained pretty affordable on both sites. We can go with Charlie Blackmon. Carlos Gonzalez is probably out again, it seems like. And then the big bats for the Marlins, especially Giancarlo Stanton. If you can fit these guys in your lineup, do it. It's an excellent scenario for them.
Him and Ozuna has hit lefties so well too.
Yes.
I'm in on both of them for sure.
Getting more hit you can even put Yelich in there. I'm not concerned about the lefty on lefty with that. So anyone from that Coors game, if you have the money for it, go ahead and do it. If you need more affordable options, I like the Mariners, especially Seth Smith and Nelson Cruz. I like the Padres, especially Alex Dickerson, but also Travis Jankowski if you're thinking about multiple steals. Phillies allow base runners. Jankowski's kind of a weird one for DFS use, but if you're thinking about a Padres stack, and I am, then he can be a good part of that.
Yeah, Matt and I are on board with Travis Jankowski. He's keeping a head-to-head team of mine alive in the stolen base category, kind of by himself. Where it's my last outfielder, but he just keeps stealing bases. All right, sure.
He's a poor man's Billy Hamilton, kind of, but also better than Billy Hamilton.
He's hitting like 240, like something real low, but he's on base in like 350, 360, which is not amazing, but like certainly good enough. Yeah, he's getting on base, and I feel like those teams that don't hit as well will be more aggressive running. They're gonna let him run. They need to get in scoring position. They're not manufacturing runs by slugging, so he's running wild, and all you care about is that he's attempting. So. Yeah, I like Jankowski. He's not a DFS stud, but at least interesting, and most people are not in there. So, yeah, I like that just fine. Who else are you looking at in the outfield?
There's George Springer. Love him against lefties. Love him in general, and he tends to have a reasonable price tag for whatever reason.
Yeah,
always a high ceiling guy, also a low floor. So, take it as you will. There's a couple of different outcomes with him, and one of them is a team carrying build. Also like Jose Bautista and Bryce Harper of the big names that are out there and kind of just floating around by themselves. Bautista has Dylan G in Kansas City, which isn't the best matchup, just because the stadium's a little larger. And then Harper's up against Samardzija, who has trouble with lefties.
Yes, he does. Yeah. Do you like Ian Desmond getting Dallas Keuchel, lefty masher there?
Yeah, like Ian Desmond. Ryan Rue is another one from that Texas lineup who hits well against lefties.
I had that, and then also lefty masher Lorenzo Cain getting Francisco Liriano. Now the Blue Jays will be in Kansas City. Lorenzo Cain has just been mean to lefties this year. Should be just fine. You're not worried about Francisco Liriano, right?
No, I'm not too concerned. I am interested to see him pitch to Russell Martin again. As kind of the Blue Jays' pet theory when they acquired him, they said Russell Martin will fix him. And we'll see just how right they are about that.
Yeah. I just had a few other names. Hunter Pence gets a lefty, and Gio Gonzalez should be fine. Hunter Pence has been limited by injuries, but he's been hitting when he's been in. So I'm not worried about that. Him batting, with Buster Posey getting Gio, who struggled. Hyun-Soo Kim has kind of become one of my favorite Baltimore outfielders also. He hits right, he's fine. He goes to the cell, and he gets Miguel Gonzalez. Should be just fine, right?
Yeah, it's a solid play. He's a little grounder heavy if memory serves, which can actually match up well against Gonzalez, who's a bit fly ball prone, but probably not enough to really make it a green light option.
And then my last couple names I had in the outfield, Dexter Fowler gets Dylan Overton. He's a switch hitter, but he's hit lefties real well. It's a bad lefty. It's not a great bullpen. Again, Cubs stack all day if you can afford it. And it's the Coliseum, but whatever. Getting the leadoff guy there, if they explode for a bunch of runs, Fowler could be a big part of it. And on the flip side, are you thinking about Chris with a K Davis getting John Lester?
Yes, I was going to mention him. He's a guy who is always a multi-homer threat. And as I mentioned, Lester is kind of just normal pitcher against righties. So Davis has the power to do some damage, possibly 2 home runs even. The downside, it's not too hard to imagine. Lester has 7 solid innings, then Hector Rondon comes in, then Aroldis Chapman comes in, and the game's over. And no one's done anything.
It's a boomer bust stack. If you try and take some A's, I could see things happening, but I could also just see that getting busted also. Any other outfielders for you? Who else you got?
Aaron Altherr has Christian Friedrich. He's hitting well since his return, better than I expected even, and has a little bit of power, a little bit of speed.
Yeah, Aaron Altherr is kind of an interesting guy, for sure, and he'll have the platoon advantage there. Anybody else for you?
Obviously, there's other options out there, but I think we covered the big ones,
the favorites,
some of the good bargains too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we can move on.
All right, let's try and figure out these pitchers because, like you said, there's aces, of course, and then there's more mid-level ones, which are kind of weird in a big slate like this. So your aces, Noah Syndergaard gets the Tigers. Any hesitations there?
Yes, actually.
Okay.
So since the Bone Spurs have kind of been talked about in the media, he's got one outing of 7 innings.
Yeah.
And that was against the Cubs. So he's got 3 outings out of like 7 that have been under 6 innings.
Yeah.
So there's issues with his longevity in the outings. Mets are also kind of starting to trail off in the playoff race. They're 1 back of the second wild card, but 2 teams are sharing that spot right now. So they're 7th in the NL.
Yeah.
I don't think the Mets are at the point where they're going to start backing off on Syndergaard. They're going to probably try to get the most they can out of him to help them get back in the race. But at some point, they'll probably recognize that they're, need to protect their asset for the future more than, go throw him 7-8 innings in a start. Yeah. So my concern basically is that he won't throw very long in the outing.
I could see that. For sure. How about the other part on the other side is Justin Verlander getting the Mets? I mean, he has to go against Syndergaard, but do you like that matchup for him?
That's my top pick for today in terms of raw talent. There's price issues to be aware of, especially on DraftKings where he's 13,600. I don't think you can roster that really. He's not that good. That's a Clayton Kershaw price, and Verlander's good, but he's not that good. He's 9,900 on FanDuel, and I think that's perfect. That's exactly where he should be priced.
Yeah, I agree. He's been good, not amazing, but definitely good. Running down, I know we picked some guys against them, but you still trust Jon Lester going to Oakland?
Yeah, and I like that he's against Dylan Overton, especially on FanDuel. That should be an automatic win. That's 12 points right there. You get 7 innings out of him, 7 strikeouts. Even if he allows 4 runs, you still got a good point total out of it.
And then, so I'm looking for aces going down the list. It's fun to say it this early. Stephen Wright is up there. He gets the Dodgers. Are you still all in on Stephen Wright? I mean, it's a knuckleball there. There's question marks, but he's good. Are you thinking about him against the Dodgers, getting an NL team?
Yeah, I'm thinking about him. The concern I have, especially lately, he doesn't seem to have as good a feel. He's got 1 really good outing and then a bunch of pretty bad outings. And so, like I mentioned, I'm a little worried he maybe doesn't have a good feel for knuckleball right now. And it's such a touchy pitch. If it's he's not getting the most out of it, he can really get hammered.
Yeah, if it goes bad, it can go really bad. I could see that. We mentioned Josh Tomlin going to Yankee Stadium. Will he allow a home run? Probably. But his ERA is 3.43, and you could see getting a lot of run support against Michael Pineda. Would you consider Tomlin the control artist going there?
I consider it. It's one that scares the crap out of me, but
yeah,
I consider it.
Yeah. Where are you looking at? I tried to clear out the obvious ones off the top of the list. But who do you like on the pitching side?
So for GPPs, I don't mind Pineda either. We've talked about the high ceiling, the low floor. If you're, especially on FanDuel, 1-pitcher format, you're playing the FanDuel squeeze with a billion people in it. Pineda could put together a 60-point outing and help carry you to victory. It can also give you an 8-point outing and completely crash your team. So
yeah,
my risk
the perfect guys for GPP because there's no point. Because there's no point in getting an okay outing and finishing middle of the pack.
Right.
So why? That's the Irvin Santana going to Tampa Bay pick where you're like, could he be fine? Sure. But why? Would at least in GPP at least, So no, I'm fully behind the crazy risky picks like that. uh, depending on your DFS format. So yeah, I think Pineda is at least worth looking at for sure.
I think either side of Anthony DeSclafani or Jameson Taillon could be okay today. It's at PNC Park, good place for pitchers, and they both sometimes pitch deep into the game. The Pirates are kind of managing innings, so probably 6 innings on their end. DeSclafani might have a little more running room to go deeper into the outing.
He's quietly put up a 2.93 ERA. It's only 10 starts, but he's been pretty fine. 52 walks to 13. Pardon me, 52 strikeouts to 13 walks. Keeping the control in check, and yeah, DeSclafani, I trust him in Pittsburgh for sure. And Taillon's plenty talented and should do fine with the Reds. So yeah, I agree. I like both sides of that. Totally an option.
Felix Hernandez's price on DraftKings is 8,400. That definitely interests me. He was bad before the injury. Hasn't really had a good outing since then. But you could definitely see him having a good outing. And if you catch a vintage Hernandez day at 8,400, you're feeling pretty good about yourself and about your chances. So that's one that I like. It's up against Tim Lincecum, so again, the win should be in the bag. Not as big a deal on DraftKings, but could also get a complete game, which is a useful bonus.
Yeah, especially because he gets so many righties in the Angels. I think he could be fine. I'm a little concerned the Angels don't strike out enough, and his strikeouts are down, but now that they're not putting Felix Hernandez ace prices on him, then you're like, okay, like they're moderate prices, they're reasonable. Because there was a while there where the price was attached to the name and you couldn't really go near it. But yeah, no, he's definitely an option for sure.
And the last name that I'm really keying in on, mostly just because he can go deep into an outing, is Ervin Santana. I think 2 complete games his last 5 starts, or maybe 6 starts. But the Twins are letting him go complete games. That's the moral of the story, basically. Good play on DraftKings, where you need a second cheaper pitcher usually, and he's 8,200, which is quite affordable. The Rays are not a terribly scary lineup these days. Not that Pierce or Geyer were really big righty slayers, but they're still part of that offense. And now they're that much weaker. So. Yeah, I mean, that's a team I think he can beat.
I mentioned him not because I thought he's a bad pick, just because he doesn't have the strikeouts to have the upside, but him going deep is definitely a big deal. In terms of the Rays, they keep adding Brad Miller cleanup. And if Brad Miller's their cleanup against righties, and Brad Miller's fine, but if that's your number 4 hitter, then yeah, that's a fine matchup for Ervin Santana completely. I think that's an option. Are you thinking about Blake Snell on the other side, or are there just too many troublesome Twins for you?
The Twins are just hitting so well right now. I'm a little bit worried about the hot hand, and usually I try to ignore that, but right now, like I said, I'm a little bit worried. I would give Snell some consideration. Same kind of caveats as Taillon. You have a guy with probably 5 to 6 innings. Not likely to throw too much more in that, and that's kind of a bummer.
I know you picked a bunch of Padres, but Matt and I both went with Jeremy Hellickson as our field of streams picks. He's going to San Diego. He's been just fine lately. He has a 3.70 ERA on the year, 1.15 WHIP. The control's in check for sure. Not a huge upside, but and like you said, the Padres hit righties a little better than they did. Once they traded Camp and they traded Melvin, but I think Hellickson, not a crazy DFS option because again the ceiling isn't as high, but in terms of just streaming a pitcher, if you're in head-to-head or whatever, I think that's a totally fine start for him, and that's why Matt and I are both taking him there. The only other name on the list that actually is pretty interesting to me, how about Jaime Garcia at home against the Braves? The Braves are not only kind of punchless, but they don't really hit lefties, and Jaime Garcia's ERA is all the way up to 4.30. I realize that, not a huge strikeout guy, but I got to trust him against a team like the Braves. So he's not exciting, but is that a matchup that's okay with you?
Yeah, for the Daily Grind, my write-up was basically that he hasn't been very good since that day he was overshadowed by Vincent Velasquez. He had an amazing outing that day, not so much since then. But the Braves are a team to give him a second go at that.
Yeah.
He could have a big night.
the strikeouts are there, the ceiling's not there, but I think the floor is pretty high. There's the guys on the Braves that are going to hit lefties are like Tyler Flowers and Jeff Francoeur.
Right.
You know, like that's their big right-handed bats. So I think Jaime Garcia could be just fine. Not exciting, but usable. Not your GPPs as much, like I said, but usable. Is there any other pitchers for you? Is that pretty much the interesting options for you on Friday?
Yeah, I think we've run through them all.
Yeah, those are the places you might want to go. Let's take a quick peek at the weekend. Also on Saturday, Homer Bailey back again is he's looked okay since he came back. I'm interested, and he gets the Pirates. He had one start. It was the Padres. He did fine. He's going to Pittsburgh against new Pirate Ivan Nova. And so I'm taking him, and he's less than 50% owned in Yahoo leagues, and I think he at least needs to be scooped up. Not that I think he's going to be an immediate stud, but worth looking at. I'm taking him there. Matt is taking Jose Barrios going to Tampa Bay, and their cleanup hitter Brad Miller. And I'm interested in Barrios now that he's back. But who's sticking out to you here on Saturday slate? Anything on the schedule, either DFS wise or just in general in baseball that you're interested in seeing?
I won't actually be up to see most of it, but Tyler Skaggs versus Taijuan Walker is one that definitely interests me. I would love to watch that one unfold.
Mm-hmm.
Skaggs has pitched quite well since returning. I think 12.1 shutout innings. And then Walker's a good pitcher too, and he's returning from the disabled list.
Yeah. I agree. They're both really interesting. When we talk about how hopeless the Angels are, and they do feel kind of hopeless, the bright spot is they do have a lot of young, talented pitching, but it's all hurt. And you're like, if they come back and they're okay, like there's, if Skaggs is fine out of his Tommy John, great. And then you have Heaney, you have, Richards, you have Tropiano, like there's a lot of ifs and question marks when they're all that hurt, but like there's talent. It's just all on the shelf. So I don't know. Skaggs is at least back and pitching. Brad, did you mute yourself again?
Yeah, it seems that way. A lot of those are recent Tommy Johns too, and that's a real bummer because they'll be out for a 2017 season.
Yeah, and, when I say hope, I'm not saying this year or next year. It's more just
hasn't gone under a knife yet. He's trying to avoid it. It's still kind of up in the air if he will, but he could be a third one going under a knife. So Skaggs is back. They've lost at least 2, if not 3, of their other good young pitchers. So they don't have anyone beyond that.
Yeah. But I mean, if we're talking 2018, and they're like, oh, the farm's empty and this and that. I'm like, there are good young pitchers. It's just they're all hurt, and who knows what they'll do when they get back. But anyway, Skaggs is one of those that I'm interested in. Also, the Phillies are starting Jake Thompson. It's a good prospect of theirs. He's coming up and gets a good landing spot in San Diego. I don't know that I'm all in to like rush out and get him, but I'm at least interested. Could be an interesting guy there for sure. And then how about on Sunday? Anything stick out to you on Sunday?
I'm looking through Sunday right now, trying to find who I like. Joe Musgrove versus Yu Darvish. That's
you want to see Musgrove coming up. He's pitching for the Astros and should be interesting. I think he's taken Lance McCullers' spot, but he looked good out of the bullpen so far. Another one of those Astros prospects guys that could be just fine. As for streamers,
control pitcher.
Yeah. As for streamers, I have Matt Shoemaker getting Seattle. He's 49%. That's still way too low. I don't know how he's so low. John Gray, I don't want him because he's in Coors. He's at 51%, so he's not eligible anymore. He's just popped over. Brandon McCarthy is at 45. That's too low, but he gets Boston. Matt is taking Jared Eichhoff going to San Diego. A little bit easier of a landing spot for lefties now. And I'm interested in that. We're streaming against San Diego this weekend. Should be fine. But yeah, Joe Musgrove is kind of interesting there. So I like Matt Shoemaker. That's my pick. He's also opposite James Paxton. Paxton also interesting. A guy that can certainly has shown some pretty good ceiling and performance so far. That'll be interesting. And Dan Straley is going to Pittsburgh, and I'm not that scared of that either. He keeps racking up strikeouts and being pretty okay. The Reds' rotation is not nearly as bad as their bullpen. It's not great, but there's some interesting spots there.
As soon as I got rid of Alfredo Simon, it got a lot better.
Yeah, also that's true. All right, well, that should about wrap it up for us for Friday and for the weekend. Brad, you got anything else going on in baseball or going away from baseball this weekend?
No, got a game on Saturday, and yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. Well, Brad is on Twitter at Baseball A Team, writing about DFS all the time and about dynasty stuff. Also, do you start to, especially as we get late in the season, you start shifting to that a little bit more as well?
Yeah, definitely pay more attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the DFS stuff I do, it becomes by rote by this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have the same things to say about the same players very frequently. It's like,
Sure.
this guy's really good at hitting lefties. This guy's really good at hitting righties. This
Sure.
guy hits this type bat well. Or,
Mm-hmm.
I get excited when I have something like Semien to talk about, where it's like you have the modest power uptick with the lefty involved, and then you also have the stolen base side. It's like, hey, multiple things to talk about that are kind of unique.
Yeah, I understand. For sure, yeah, the DFS stuff, we've kind of figured out what guys are this year. And it's not boring, but it's hard to uncover new things. But
Yeah.
You're feeling that way about dynasty stuff, though. At least it's a little more fresh, especially post trade
The
deadline.
dynasty stuff, there's always a lot more to talk about. Player valuations can change quite frequently, and just there's so many ways to evaluate guys too. I try to pull in as much scouting information as I can from what's available. Try to talk to whoever I can to get some information that isn't available, and then there's just a dozen ways to evaluate stats too.
Yep. And then who knows what happens in a month with September call-ups and who shows up and what we get to see. So, yeah, follow Brad on Twitter at BaseballAteam. I'm on Twitter at HigginsFOS. Love hearing from you guys. Thanks for listening, joining us for our live Friday show. Glad to continue doing this every week. It's kind of a fun, weird thing trying this year, and it's been good. That should do it for us. For Brad, I'm Dylan. Have a good weekend. I'll be back on Monday with Matt for another week of DFS stuff, and we'll talk to you then.